Hi, everyone. Um, we are back, AI and Real Life, episode, correct me if I'm wrong, 10. Double digits, Elisa. Congratulations.
That's right. Yeah, I know. It's like the first double-digit birthday, which is very exciting.
We are even more excited to welcome Laura Shackelford. She's our speaker today, and it's going to be one of a kind discussions that just guys stay tuned. Going to be very interesting. Marketing, AI, and customer engagement. All the juicy topics. And so I would like to introduce Laura to everyone. She is the CEO and founder of Fidera AI, a consulting firm specializing in AI and data strategy across customer interactions. Laura has played pivotal roles at Intel, Oracle, QLAK, and Microsoft, and contributed to Marketo and Guidewire's success. With 2 decades of experience in data and AI, Lara has driven growth at startups like DataStax and Looper, achieving 6 exits. Lara is a LinkedIn top voice in AI, and she was honored as a leading CMO by Data Captive and Diversity First. Lara is an active advisor and investor in the data and AI space and has served in the Gartner Technology Marketing Customer Advisory Board and Women at Intel Sales and Marketing Board. Welcome, Lara.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
Yeah, and it looks like we're both at the libraries today, right? So I'm in my Trinity College library, the Dublin one. So what is your library, Lara, today?
That's right. So we've got but 2 European, I guess even UK libraries. Mine is one of the Bodleian libraries in Oxford. I just got back this week from my first week in my getting my master's in artificial intelligence at Oxford, and so I didn't get a chance to visit this library yet. But when I'm back in May, it will be one of my first stops.
Please do, and send us the pictures. I mean, I'm always, hunting for, looking for this beautiful, library halls, which I haven't visited yet, but that would definitely be on my list.
I just
All
look
right.
so sad with my black white wall. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you you
Messing up
might
your
want to
picture.
spice it up a little bit.
I'll send you the background too, Elena.
Please do.
All right. Yeah. So yeah. Thank you for the introductions. We're really excited to have Lara here, and as usual, folks. Yeah, this is the Matrix code writing, but I just wanted to set up the stage, saying that as usual, our usual kind of a disclaimer, if you will, that we'll be talking about very applicable real life scenarios here. We're not talking about Skynet type of apocalypse or AI taking over. And today we're going to be focusing on talking about marketing and customer strategies with ethical AI. And I will pass the baton to Lara, our expert, and we'll just go from there. All right.
All right. Hey, before I share, I want to mention one thing. So thank you again, Elena and Alyssa, for bringing me on to talk to your guest today. I'm really thrilled and honored to be here and have a lot to share. I know in terms of ethical AI, it's a topic that's dear to many of our hearts. One thing I wanted to share though before I present is the green, what is it, the Skynet background. In one of my own sales deck for my company, one of my slides, I have that image. Of course, it's a very, an often used image. But the reason I share that is I love that image because I've used it to express that data. You've heard people quote a lot, data is the new oil, which was a term coined in 2006, I believe, by an English gentleman. And since then, it's now there's this idea that data is the new uranium, right? Because don't hoard your data. Take only the data that you need. Treat your data, very carefully with respect, and make sure that your data doesn't become, something that works against you or your customers. That is another, I guess there's a little bit of that definitely in the ethical AI conversation, but that's another talk. But seeing your green screen always makes me think of data as the new uranium. Sorry, hope that didn't put a bummer on you using that screen.
Right. I'm just trying to kind of stop sharing so that you could share
All
your
right,
presentation materials. And
I'm
let
up
me see
now.
why it doesn't. Elena, can you actually make me stop sharing my screen so Lara could share
Mhm.
her.
Of course. Hold on.
Yeah, here we go. Awesome. All right.
Okay, and are you all seeing my screen now?
We
Yes.
do. Yeah. So
Wonderful.
yeah, here we go.
Great. All right. So, and with this, I can't see the chat while I present here. So feel free to jump in if there's a burning question that someone wants to ask as I go. So I'm wonderful, nice interjection. Thank you. One of the things that I've spent a lot of time on in my career, even before, it certainly not before AI existed, because we all know it's been around for a long time. But throughout my career, ethics and values have been a kind of my guiding compass throughout my career. I had my first company that I worked for was called, you all know it, it's Levi Strauss. And I worked for a fashion designer briefly and then decided to go the corporate route. And I worked at Levi's. And the reason I chose them was because they had this aspiration statement, is what they call it. But it was basically a statement of values. But this is back in 1993 when they were, as far as I'm aware, the first major corporation who publicly shared their statement of values. And when I read it, I remember I was sitting there contemplating, okay, am I going to be have a long-term career in fashion design? I have this great job with an incredible designer, but I couldn't draw very well. And back then, now you have computers and AI to help you, but back then, if you couldn't draw, you were not a very successful fashion designer. And I picked up my dad's Fortune magazine. This is back when that, getting the Fortune magazine in the mail every month was kind of a big deal. And I saw this article about Levi's and I thought, that's it. I want to go to a place that honors diversity, that cares about inclusion, that holds their leaders to account, to be inclusive. And so I joined Levi's. I was there for 3 years. They ended up moving me from their Chicago office out to San Francisco. So I got to see everything from their headquarter position. And I always say that was where I got my training in tech during my first 8 years of my career at Oracle. And I got my training in values and ethics from those 3 years at Levi's and how to apply those in an organization. So we all probably have a company or some event like that that shaped our caring about ethics when it comes to work, and certainly ethics in AI. But that's my experience, and that's kind of the platform that I've built upon throughout my career. And that's me again. Okay, so we've all heard of biased AI. There's a quote or a statistic out there that it could cost the global economy 10 trillion by 2025. Obviously, that's 5% of the total GDP. There is a lot at stake. It's interesting because we all want, well, I would hope we all care about ethical AI for the sake of humanity and doing the right thing by people. But at a minimum, companies, boards who may not always prioritize that aspect of humanity first do care when it's driving the bottom line. And biased AI is going to impact our company earnings. It's something that we need to be focused on as organizations and proactively address in our AI strategies. So a couple of things that I want to talk about here. I've come from the focus of my work today and my work throughout my whole career has been customer experience and marketing. And that's been about, learning to how do you engage with your customer at every single touch point as a company. And that's everything from, brand is a major impact factor in that, because you want every experience that someone has with you as a company to feel a certain way. And that's whether they're, clicking on an invoice that they're going to pay, or calling support, or receiving a marketing message. And so anyway, so this really focuses today on go-to-market, and we'd want to talk about how to master AI in your go-to-market and build it with your go-to-market with a strong ethical compass. Want to cover understanding the risks behind AI, and then definitely position for you and, in conversations that you're having, ethical AI as that cornerstone, the kind of building block, the foundation even of where we should start when building go-to-market strategies. And then, of course, you can call it the AI revolution, you can call it lots of things, but we all know with kind of the big data movement in the, gosh, that was what, the 2010-ish, I think it started, and throughout that decade, people became so much more focused on data and making data-driven decisions, and that was a big, phrase that people were using at the time. I'm happy now that, AI is, of course, we're in this, hype cycle. I'm happy that ethics, though, is becoming a part of that conversation, a core part of that conversation. It's not just about data cleanliness or data readiness. It is about starting with ethics at the core. And it takes intentionality of course, to be able to start with ethics and build upon, build from there as you build your go-to-market strategy. So in go-to-market planning, I'm sure you're all very familiar with where you start. You start with, there's more complexity to this, of course. When I built my go-to-market strategy for a $20 billion plus business at Intel, my go-to-market plan was deeply complex, but the essentials of it, no matter if it's there or if it was a Looker was about $1 million when I joined them. In either case, you're starting with the basic parts of the go-to-market, which you start with anywhere in any industry, which is, of course, outlined here: who, why, what makes you unique to that customer, and then how are you going to get to the customer, and what metrics are you going to use to track progress and learn and improve from there. What ethical AI does to the go-to-market plans, though, is it definitely helps you to analyze your customer data without bias. So if you think about, as I'm looking at who my ideal customer profile should be as a marketer, one of the most important things that we do in go-to-market planning is understand who our target is, make sure that we know who our ideal customer profile is. And that takes understanding as a very basic level. If you think about who are the customers who are most relate to you, who are your raving fans, the one who would say you changed their careers or you changed their business and dramatically helped them improve their business. That is a starting place for building your ICP. There's a whole lot of data and research that goes into it too, but on a qualitative level, that's a thing you can think about. But the other thing is it has to be based on fair data. You have to know that your data that you've started with is fair, that you've built it with ethics in mind. And a lot of data engineers, that's a part, which is a role that is somewhat new to people now. A big part of what they're doing is focusing on fairness and ethics in data engineering. So bringing that to play from the start in the data that people are using, rather than having to go back later and clean things up or make them ethical, after the fact. There's a lot of data out there today where we are having to go in and make things better where we are now, right? But you need to build your go-to-market plan from the beginning, as soon as you're even at the point of looking at your list of who you're going to go to, with ethics in mind. We want to ensure personalization without discrimination. And we all know what personalization is. It can feel great when you're, I'm trying to think, when you're on a travel site one day and you're thinking about planning your trip to England in May for your next course at Oxford, and maybe the next day you go back to a different travel site, and all of a sudden you, or I should say I in this case, get an ad from Delta for, special fares from Seattle to London. That feels great. What doesn't feel great is if I'm suddenly, on my LinkedIn and I get targeted with an ad about, something very, very specific about my trip to Oxford that no one would know except for that AI engine and the data they've been collecting about me that I maybe didn't want them to have, right? So there's both making sure that when we create these experiences and the personalization, that they are personalized without feeling creepy, and that certainly that they're done without creating discrimination. The other thing is we need to be really clear as organizations on how decisions are made, what we're deciding. There should be no, I'm calling it black boxes here, but there should be no lack of clarity for people across your organization on what needs to happen to have, an ethical approach to your AI from the start of your go-to-market programs. Be clear on the data that you're going to use, and how you got the data, and how you're prioritizing usage of that data. that is essential. And it's something that I've done in my go-to-market programs really throughout time, is making sure that people know this is who we're going to go after and why. And but now there's another layer of being able to apply, more data ethics practices to that, that can bring even more transparency. And that's super important with marketing when you think of automation. I worked at Marketo, which is they've been acquired by Adobe, but one of the larger marketing automation platforms. And there's so much automation that goes into marketing, and you want to make sure that people know how decisions are made. When you decide to route a contact or someone who responds to a campaign to a certain place, why did you make that decision? And people, again, should be able to see that, just again, for the fact of, it's not that as a marketer you want to over communicate at all, because we all have our areas of expertise. People do, though, want to know how decisions are made.
Yeah, so I had a quick question. I was just I'm definitely not a marketing specialist. So, and we're talking about ethics here, and all of a sudden, I mean, we're all in this, and we kind of use these terms all the time. But I'm just thinking, when was that turning point when people actually started caring about those things? Because you know how it is, how they say, like, move fast, break things, whatever it is. So, what actually changed? When was that paradigm shift, when people actually started factoring this ethical considerations, in addition to everything else, into how they build the product, how they market them, how they target people, and things like that? Because, like, in the AI legal landscape, everything is happening at once right now, but we're still in that stage of all this litigation. Nothing even went to trial yet. So it's like, in terms of enforcement, and we're not talking about legal framework here, but the ethical considerations. So I'm just wondering, what do you think, if there was anything that really, like, contributed to that to that paradigm shift? Is, as I'm sensing, that's what happened at some point, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad that you raised that point, because it was a shift. And I would say, I don't think there was a moment. I do think, for my experience, and take this for what I've gone through in my career, there was an era when marketing automation first came out. When I implemented my first marketing automation system in 2009, it was get as much data as you can. I mean, I remember going to, it was Tech Target was one of the publications we would buy leads from. And it was just, oh my gosh, I have a pipeline gap. I have a $6 million pipeline gap. I need to close it. Give me as many names as you can. And this was before GDPR and, all the things. Give me as many names and email addresses as you can for people who would be in my target market. And I think at that time there was just this idea of, how do you get to people, as many people who could be in your target market as you can. Obviously that changed rapidly, because you don't want to go to just a large audience. I think to me, I think the advent of using the ideal customer profile, and focusing on that, is started to bring about more of this opportunity to look at the data more closely, be more deliberate about who we're targeting. I mean, no one should have ever been doing spray and pray. I'm sure you all have heard that term, with their marketing. But marketing automation had this sort of, it had this unintended consequence, if you will, where it was such a great thing to be able to automate reaching out to people, through email and digital marketing. And but on the other hand, it brought about this opportunity for people to go to broad audiences. And I think that's where you got a lot of, you're contacting people maybe without following the guidelines, having those ethics in place. Fast forward to, and it also created, I mean, this is another conversation, a different topic for you all, but it also created, with an unintended consequence, is it's funny, it was meant to be a bridge between sales and marketing. I believe it created a divide between sales and marketing, because you had this situation where you're going, go back to 2009, and we have a pipeline gap, and I'm going to go get as many contacts as I can and see if they'll respond to this promotion of, in this campaign, and these several promotions in this nurture stream. And I've signed up with sales that we've agreed that I would take, however many, 10,000 MQLs, and I would qualify those MQLs and work with BDRs to qualify them and turn them into X number of sales qualified, sales accepted leads. And when I did that, that was deemed success, right? And that was deemed, sales saying, yes, you've agreed to this number, you've signed off. and now, we're going to take it and close that business. But you end up with marketing could be wildly successful and sales is not successful at all. And I mean, that's not at all what really the basis of ethical AI, but even that example, I think, is an example of ethical AI. I will come back to answer your question fully, but even that example is one where I think, we're in it together, marketing and sales. And I don't think anyone had bad intentions. I certainly didn't when I started the MQL handshake saying we're completely partners. But the real handshake happens when there is no handover, where sales and marketing are in it together. So as I think people started to get better about, being more focused with their outreach, being more sophisticated with their way they used marketing automation, taking a stronger approach in their go-to-market, where they said, you know what, I have 18,000 contacts that I can reach out to, or let's say 18,000 accounts that I can reach out to. And I remember the day that I did this, that I said, okay, that's fine, but only 4,000 of those are the ones that we really want to sell to, and that really fit in with our kind of raving fans. And from this minute forward, we're going to proactively contact those 4,000 accounts. Will proactively contact, maybe 20 of them will deeply engage with, and anyone outside of those 4,000 we're not going to engage with. We're going to direct them back to resources online and other places, so that we spend our effort and the focus in the right way. When you start to limit your audience like that, that was, Elena, I believe that's where then you get more visibility and opportunity to be more clear about the ethics and what's behind the data and how you're leveraging that data. So to me, that turning point came, I'm trying to think of it was about 2016, when account-based marketing, maybe 2015, 2016, account-based marketing was supposedly this new thing, and marketers started going, okay, let's stop the wild ride that we're on of marketing to too many people and market to those specific people. To me, that was the turning point. To your point, Elena, it's nowhere near done. Lots of companies are still doing that. Lots of companies haven't figured out their ICP yet. Even when they haven't necessarily taken it the step beyond. I'm not just going to be more intentional about the people I'm contacting, but about having ethics in who I'm contacting, and ensuring there's fairness in the data, and no discrimination, and how I'm routing people through automation steps and things like that. So there's still a long way to go, but to me, that was kind of the beginning of the turning point.
I was gonna add, and you kind of led up to my sort of question, but on the marketing side, right? And you've obviously been working in that area extensively. So the moment the ChatGPT came out and generative AI, DALL-E, and all the good stuff, everything came out practically at the same time. So the first thing everybody was still talking about, is like, it's gonna do wonders for marketing. Marketing would be the first kind of thing it's gonna just revolutionize, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in marketing, I'm not quite familiar with that. But from your perspective, how willing are the professionals in the marketing sector kind of willing to accept AI and just be like, are they really so excited to be implementing that? Or just people are, as in many sectors, people are still on the fence. The educational part of it is very, very much kind of day to day. It's very important because people still don't understand. They don't want to accept that technology, even if they are promised it's going to automate this and that. You'll have more time to chat with your buddies and drink coffee. I don't know, whatever it is you do in your free time. But the sentiment is people are used to doing things a certain way for years. Somebody was doing marketing for, I don't know, 30 years, right? And then comes DALL-E 3 and people are like, okay, so from now on you use this and you'll just be fully automated or whatever it is. So aren't people scared, or what's the sentiment there? My question, that's kind of my long question is this.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm going to answer your question from
with a question.
No, but maybe I'll do that before we wrap up here. But I think one answer I could give you is that I could live in a little bit of a bubble on this if I chose to, because I get the privilege of working with CMOs all day, every day, who are keen on understanding AI. They want to be on the leading edge of it. They want to be the people who are driving and shaping how marketing uses it versus being people who are left behind. And so that tends to be more of the audience that I engage with, not because I'm trying to leave others out or be unfair or unethical in terms of who I'm targeting, but those people tend to be more drawn to wanting to help from me and my organization to develop their AI fueled strategy for marketing and customer experience. So, so I know a lot of folks that are leaning in. I think two things. One, there's the idea that there are a lot of people that I think are definitely still on the wait and see, and I know it's there and I need to deal with it, but my workload is super busy, and kind of when I have to, I'll look at it, or I'm nervous and I'm almost going to do nothing, rather err on the side of doing nothing rather than kind of dip my toe in the water and find out that it's freezing cold or boiling, and it's scary, because the more the more you the more you actually know about what this can do. And so I think the other dynamic I want to point out, in fact, someone just posted this in my school chat earlier, is in the US, companies are so restrictive, larger companies, to their employees about how they can use AI in their roles. In fact, I was talking to someone who is a VP of product marketing for a tech company, very successful, a couple $1 billion revenue tech company. And this person was saying, gosh, I've been so stressed. My team has been working night and day because we're launching our AI product. And said, I just wish we could have used AI because it would have made our launch so much easier. And they said, but our legal team, our company is very conservative, and our legal team said, absolutely no AI. There's too much risk as a company, and we can't use it. Just not even a question. Don't bring any options to them. And this is a company who's launching an AI product and selling that AI product to other people and trying to convince other people that they should let their employees use it. So I think there is just, in the US especially, there's a lot of that, fear and, being cautious, when in fact there are things that companies can do, like have a private team within ChatGPT. There's so much that they can do in terms of, building their own LLMs and using things with their internal data that keep things within their universe. So I think a lot in the US also is you've got people who just are not allowed to use AI. There's a Salesforce report that came out maybe it was 6 months ago, and it gave a number. I think it was something like, I'm not even going to use the number because I'm going to get the percent wrong, but it was a very high number of people that said definitely more than 50% of people use AI to do their jobs. And not that many companies in the US, and I don't have this number either, not as many companies in the US are allowing people to do it. So there is the idea that people are, doing it without being allowed to. But I hope, Elena, that answers your question in some way. That I think, there's still a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that is kind of holding people back from trying it at all. And then there are just the corporations that are, scared and trying to limit people from using it, and that's going to slow down, the adoption of people.
Yeah, I mean, with all the lawsuits coming out left and right, I wouldn't blame them, sort of, because everybody's trying, because obviously the US is a very litigious country. Everybody knows that. And that's kind of that goes to what you said, Lara. Everybody's scared, the legal teams on some big companies, they're very scared. What if this generative AI, what if this marketing campaign spits out something that's very similar to a certain brand or anything, and just who's going to be liable for that? And same as with ChatGPT, right? There were instances, and we all know about that, employees of a company disclosing some private proprietary information, the chatbot, and it kind of got public, and everybody's but staying on the side of caution and just banning this technology, banning it from use altogether. And these are two different things, and sometimes companies are definitely crossing the line, and just it's a mess. I'll be optimistic. It's a mess.
It is. And I love your legal perspective and that of people on the call, right? So very eager certainly to hear more from people, but it is a mess. I'm sure it will get messier before it's clean. Um, I think we yeah, I think the other thing we're going to be dealing with is cleanup from not having built fairness and into the models, from the start. And there are things that we can do. The one thing I wanted to mention though is we talk about, in fact, in 2016, I launched a product it was a product where sales managers could work with their sellers, and it would guide the sales managers and the sellers through the next best action they should take to try to move a deal along in the process, or try to coach and guide their team through a sales process. And it wasn't about AI going and reaching out to the customer, especially not in 2016, and having a conversation with them. It was very much about AI and the human together. And I'm sure everyone on this call has heard this term, augmented intelligence. But the idea of human and machine is super important, I believe, to certainly this ethical part of AI, but also in just using AI for your go-to-market and customer experience, and having those checks and balances, where you talk about, you have you use your AI tools to ready your data to help get your campaigns in order, help with your creative on your campaigns and everything else, but you still want to have a human in it. And I use that word, ensure human control, on this slide. But I do think, there may be, I don't know what a future might hold where a human is not needed in a process like this, but for today and the foreseeable future, we need that linkage and the leverage of both the AI and the humans working together. And I think that's how you can have some checks and balances too. Is there anything else, Elena, on that?
No, I was gonna say, I'm so sorry. I just kind of threw you off your presentation.
Didn't
I love
mean
it.
to hijack the
Well,
presentation.
we always give disclosures that our conversation might just turn very different ways regarding all the kind of talking points we prepared, which we did. But yeah, yeah. But it's such a fascinating, obviously, topic, and how can you not ask those questions?
It is. Yes, I welcome the question. So interrupt. That's to me, that's what makes this a good conversation. So yeah, I think we've covered this point, about really, I think the other part of it I'll just highlight is prediction. And we've been using predictive analytics for a long time. And there's a lot of goodness in it. But again, even in prediction, not even in prediction, but prediction as well, we need to make sure that we've built our predictive models to prevent bias. Protecting privacy seems so obvious, but you mentioned, Elena, you mentioned the legal aspects of it, and it's not something that's always done as it should be. So that's a component that we need to continue to focus on, and I'm sure that AI will help us to be better and better with that. And then, of course, respecting user preferences. I gave the model earlier, but there's a huge push now in customer experience to have this hyper personalization, and feel like you've got this personalization happening at scale. You've built in all this automation so that there can be a personalized experience, and yet it's supposed to feel like a personalization to an audience of one. And that's very tricky to do, but that's where you need to build trust with the personalization. I mean, you don't want to personalize to the extent that you're eroding trust. And I talk a lot about that. Not as much here, but in other conversations with clients, we do talk about making sure that when we use AI, that we are using it to build trust and help people know that we're respecting their preferences and respecting their boundaries as best we can, versus kind of, being creepy crawly inside of, every aspect of their lives where they may not want us.
Which we already experienced to a certain extent. Everybody had this, I'm pretty sure, whoever is watching as well, you've been having some private conversations with your friends, and then you just have this influx of all the ads that were kind of all the words that triggered all the words in the conversation triggered those ads, and it's just, yeah, creepy is an understatement at this point.
Yeah, I always maybe I hope I'm not scaring people or overstating this, but I don't think I could overstate it. My family and I talk about this, and we actually last week we set up. I'm not going to give away the words or numbers, but we set up a system. If anyone ever calls and says, emergency, I need you to come, wire money to bail me out of jail, or pay for an
Some
ambulance or
safe
something.
words.
Yes, exactly.
Code
And then
words.
after
Yeah.
that, there are numbers and there's a process because, and
Yeah.
they're, I think we all need to have that because, and, my niece at one point, who's brilliant, but she said, I'm glad I'm a teacher because I don't have as much of that out there. And my response was, your voice is out there everywhere, whether you think it is or not. You're maybe not doing webinars, but somewhere someone has got a database of your voice, because you've used it digitally and things. So yeah, there is that aspect of it too. So it's everywhere. And yet we as individuals who are building go-to-market plans and creating customer experiences can at least do our part to respect those boundaries and obviously make sure that people's personal data is protected to every extent that we can when we're involved in it. Okay. I'll go on to the next part, which is just a quick example from Patagonia. But there are many ways to build go-to-market plans when considering ethical AI. I mean, one, of course, is sustainability. So I was working for a very large company where we had a lot of sustainability initiatives, and we had a lot of commitments in terms of sustainability that, we had to meet by a certain date, but we weren't talking about it in the way that we should have been, and suddenly found our competitors were using it as this, their big talking point. And while we were more sustainable in our approaches, it made it look like our competitor was. And so, and that is just one example of, okay, we were already doing it, but we needed to talk more about it. And so we formed a committee across lots of organizations at the company. As you can imagine, with a large company, right, you have so many stakeholders, because we needed to make sure anything we were going to say was legally safe to say, but also was comfortable for people. And that's, also the nuanced part of being ethical, that, people don't want to perceive that you're even overcommitting. Even if what you're saying is true, you've just got to be so straightforward and careful in commitments. And I think, where we are doing things for sustainability, by all means, let's talk about them and let's share it with people, but do it in a responsible way that people feel like, okay, I can trust this company, and I can go along with them on this journey, but I also trust them that what they say they're going to do, they're going to do. And Patagonia did a great job of this in a go-to-market effort that they had. What they've always been, I'm sure probably everyone on this call knows, Patagonia has always been built on being, respectful to the environment, employee friendly. They just operate with incredible ethics and values. But they wanted to take a more ethical approach to sustainable marketing. And what they did is they went and they found a partner who could help them, who ran an AI platform that was built on sustainability. I can't share any more than that, unfortunately, because it's a really interesting story. But what they did is they re-engineered their marketing, kind of go to market, their processes, how they automated things, how they engaged with customers and prospects in a way that they were able to increase customer engagement, they increased their revenue, and at the same time reduce their carbon footprint. So I think that's an example of where, the being intentional and how you design your go-to-market campaigns from the start, and saying it's not just about, am I kind of double checking that I have ethics built in, or that I'm, being, following privacy rules, but how am I proactively being sustainable and, being ethical in my programs. And when you build your programs like that proactively, like they're in it from the start, there's so much that you can do.
I want to ask another question, but
Go for it, please. I love it.
So I don't know, it just occurred to me, the word ethics, right? Before this whole generative AI thing and AI in general, like in the public consciousness, right, that exploded in 2022. Obviously, the technology was there for years, but public at large was not very, as always, not aware of that. The word ethics, right? It's been used a lot, and it's been used even more lately.
Mhm.
And was it always used in marketing, kind of in the marketing side of things? I don't, again, I'm not a marketing person, but I don't think so. Only kind of with the like AI revolution, I would say people started really, because all those problems that kind of were surfacing in and out, the AI brought it all to the fore. It's kind of amplified everything, the biases, the discrimination, all that stuff, right? It just amplified everything. So people started to notice those things even
Data
more.
misuse. I mean, there's like a cluster of all these issues when you talk about AI, just kind of thinking about that bucket, that and things just keep falling in, right? So we just so yeah, I think it just kind of expands on my prior questions, like when was the time. I mean, I understand there might not be that perfect moment, but yeah, I guess there was just the process of people realizing. And I'm finishing to read the book by Mustafa Suleiman, he was a co-founder of DeepMind, then sold to Google.
Great
Now
book.
he's in section The Coming Wave. So
Mhm.
basically, that's the guy who, like, they worked on AlphaGo that beat the human, in Go game and stuff like that. So, but one of his points is that, as Laura, you were talking, this cross-functional, like multi-stakeholder collaboration within the company, and then between the companies, between the businesses, that what needs to be done. And all of a sudden, people like ethicists, philosophers, political scientists, all this, we used to think like this esoteric, purely like humanities professions, they all of a sudden come to light because these people are needed even within engineering organizations and like, just tech communities to talk about those things. Because before that, no one really, people would just build things and just go. They haven't really thought about all those ethical, philosophical, moral aspects of things. So yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I think
It's
there's a
perfect.
realization right now within the border community that you just have to take those things into account. Otherwise, that might not work very well, because this technology needs to be contained at a certain level. I mean, it has to, like, what are the guardrails, right? There is no legal framework. Well, with the EU AI Act, we might have some stuff coming in, but like before that, there was no, I mean, there were no guardrails. It was just basically do whatever you think you can. You are excited by this technology, just build it, go forward, and that's it. But now it's just not the case anymore. And things, those things happened really fast. So yeah.
They did.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think you just referenced the EU AI Act that just recently came out, right?
It still has to go through. I mean, it's pretty much finalized right now, the vote, right, Elena? I think it has to go through a couple of additional hoops, but it's pretty much the done deal at this point. Yeah, and it's gonna go into effect in like 3 stages, 3 tiers, depending on the category of the AI systems as they are defined in the Act. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty much there.
Yeah. Well, the reason I wanted to clarify that is I think the EU has done a service, for the US. And certainly I don't mean to just focus on Europe and the US here, but the EU is kind of hasn't kind of, they have definitely led the way for, data privacy and respecting the individual and their choices. And I'm, curious to see what the future holds if that continues with AI, but I imagine it will. And certainly I think that act is one example of that. But to talk to your point directly, it's funny, while you were talking, I was sketching out a slide that I want to create for future presentations like this, because there is a timeline to this that my experience says, no, before it was contact anyone and everyone who might be a fit for your business and, get the data any way that you had to that wasn't, illegal, if you will. I mean, it was just much more kind of brazen in terms of getting data and contacting people. There's something that happened that changed actually a lot of things that happen in companies. And I know you all are familiar with this. George Floyd happened in, what was it? That was spring of 2020, I think, or 2020. And that suddenly, around about a year prior to that, I was actually at Microsoft when this happened. There was a huge, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, movement that was created because someone at Microsoft, they didn't realize that there was a group, women at Microsoft. I was on the steering committee for the marketing part of it. Most large companies have these employee resource groups. Someone didn't realize when they sent an email to women at Microsoft, it went to every person who was in the Women at Microsoft group, and there were, uh, tens of thousands of us who were on that email alias. And someone sent a note one day and said, "Hey, this is all documented publicly. By the way, I would never share anything that was not mine to share." But someone sent an email and said, "Hey, I've had this experience. These two things have happened to me. I want to go into that detail. Can someone help me?" And they thought they were going to get a woman at Microsoft support person responding to them. And instead, what ended up happening is woman after woman after woman, and even others who weren't women, but who's had similar experiences for, you know, um, different parts of them, their religion, other things. People started responding, and you have thousands of people responding to it and saying, "Here's my experience." Um, and Microsoft suddenly had to just take a massive step up and care about diversity and inclusion and equity. And that was a year before George Floyd. So I'd say some of this, Microsoft obviously is, doing great things now in that area. I'm sure, you know, every organization, it's a journey and a learning journey. It's not something that's going to change overnight, but they have done a lot. But kind of, I think anything they do like that is going to lead the way for others. Then you add on top of it. So that was 2019. You add on top of it 2020, when the horrible, George Floyd was horribly taken from this world and unjustly. And companies then started really caring about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think it's funny because that almost backfired. There was about a year or two where it was everyone was all in on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and people were making stands and saying we're going to stand behind this as an organization. And then there was and almost like people took two steps forward and two steps back, or one step back at least. And I think even I saw a couple of the major players announce publicly that they were backing off some of their investments in those areas over the last year. But I think, I don't have the data on it, but I hope that more people, took it as a learning experience and are making things better. To me, I'm making a conclusion that I don't have data to support. My belief is that maybe some of that also brought to light, the need for ethics and how we interact with people, how we market to people, how we use data. And I think, when you combine that with AI becoming so pervasive, people became more aware of it when ChatGPT, of course, came out, and more able to access it, right? Because suddenly it was around forever, but suddenly there was an interface and a user interface for people to engage with it. So I think that, kind of earlier situation in the world, and then you add to it AI, and people realizing suddenly the urgency of what the good AI can do for companies and the bad it can do to humanity if it's not cared for well, right? I think there's those two things combined, to me, I think, are why ethics and AI have become more prominent and more important than ever. Does that answer? Do you have any comments or questions on that? I think it was Elisa who said that last. I'm not seeing the screen for some reason, so want to
Yeah.
make sure. Yeah.
No, that was great. I just wanted to get the perspective because it's definitely a process, but yeah, for each person, I guess might be some sort of a, event maybe that. But again, it's never like this. It's kind of it's the aggregate of things, and how people's mentality, I guess, shifts to certain,
Right.
response to certain narratives. So that's
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty
It's
well.
a winning path, for sure. Hopefully it's winding and dips down sometimes, but overall moves up and to a better direction. This is just a point about data challenges are, I know we've got some data experts like Marcia Drake, I think, is here on the call, but data challenges, of course, are at the core of this, and making sure that we understand what we're building, how we're using the data, and we have to be ethical in how we approach data in our go-to-market, in our engagements, experiences with our customers. So I talk about it here, but it's using diverse data sets from the beginning. Being able to, there are tools that you can use to detect, employee bias. You want to continuously audit. You want to have humans in the mix. It can't just be, the machine, and you think you've got everything set, and then it's going to catch it. So that's one part of the data story. The other thing is we do need to have more complete, I'll say, customer understanding where we can. So we don't want to focus just on quantitative data. As much as quantitative is great, we also want to have a way to bring in qualitative into the data that we're using, so we've got a more rounded view. So, of course, user interviews is a great place, user surveys, and then you leverage AI to analyze feedback and analyze social media conversations. So having a more complete view of the data versus just, what makes someone's contact information and their actions that they take on their digital footprint, numbers. We want to have that full stories, or fuller story, as best we can. And then the third aspect, and I think you all on this call, I know, could give me, in fact, maybe a tutorial in data privacy by all means. But so I don't need to educate you on this, but obviously data privacy concerns, right? One of the things that came up in our course last week was, data hoarding. Should you data hoard versus be selective?
Yeah.
And one of my colleagues who I have is brilliant, one of my classmates, I should say, and I have deep respect for, and they're in an area that's just, it's a little less, I don't want to say much more about the organization, actually, but they said, hey, there's a reason that I'm hoarding data right now, because there are things that might happen in the world that I can never predict, that might mean that I'm going to need data that couldn't begin to know today that I'll need in the future. I mean, there are some situations like that, but generally we want to make sure data is not the new uranium. We want to make sure that we're collecting only the data that we need, that we're anonymizing wherever we can. And then, of course, complying with regulations and, the new ones as they come out. And then this is just kind of recapping it. So we're coming towards the end here. And again, as we wrap up, I welcome any additional comments or questions, but we want to, as we build our go-to-market programs or our engagement programs to engage with customers in, chatbots is one that I know is chatbots are a thing that people often use as hey, I don't know what to do in AI. I just know my board or my CEO are pressuring me to have an AI strategy, and I'm going to throw a chatbot at it, which is actually not a recommended course of action, because there are just better ways to start to use AI as a business strategy, to help have better data practices, better governance, align your organization around a strategy. But anyway, the fairness in AI decision making, the data sets that you use in terms of data, how you engage with customers, obviously is one of the cornerstones. You want to have accountability into the process, so that people are held accountable and they're making choices that are aligned to, the ethics and values that you have as an organization. And then, of course, address data privacy concerns. And again, this is just a wrap up of how ethical AI can be a strategic advantage. So Patagonia was a great example. We need more examples like that, where we can show that, doing the right thing, maybe it's in the short term not going to get you as much financial gain as doing something, that is not as ethical or as sustainable. But long term, and even in the medium term, examples like Patagonia show that it can help drive growth by doing the right thing. And that's it. So that's me. That's ethical AI applied to go-to-market and customer experience. If there are any final questions or comments, I'd welcome them.
Yeah, I wanted to address Mark's comments. He's been commenting, throughout our talk, and I think he's making some really good points there. Is because I'm working in the embedded software company in the compliance, third-party licensing and stuff like that, and I'm working with software bills of materials. Pretty much what Mark is saying here is sort of like the list of ingredients, what's in your product. And I think when we're talking about customer trust and how you can leverage on that, I personally think that's probably one of the ways to go, where the AI companies who are the providers, the developers, the producers of these products, they can actually, they will either do it themselves from like ethical perspective, or they will be compelled to do so by, whether it's executive orders, or we're going to have some sort of like legislation where they will have to list the third-party components, the data, so they'll have to be transparent about what's in their products. And I think that will go a long way towards building the customer trust. And sort of like in a supply chain, when you have a list of parts, and then you distribute the product, and your customer wants to know what's in the product because you don't want to trip them up, and that's how you build that kind of a trust and understanding, and that when you give your customers peace of mind, so they know what they're getting, right? So I just wanted to address that because it just kind of resonates with me, Mark, if you're still there. So definitely, and we'll see how that's going to go. I mean, I don't know how EU AI Act, what the implementation procedure is going to be. When you are a developer of the high-risk AI system, you will have to register that, I think, with the government, and what that would entail, and all those kind of things. But even right now in the US, we have this requirements for the bills of materials, and FDA requires you to list certain ingredients. Some, if you're a producer of the medical device, you would have to, and there's some certain software there, you would have to list all the third-party kind of components that go into your software product, so that people could know what's inside. So I think that's kind of that's at least how I feel that might be similar to that. So yeah, if your model was trained on certain data, you would have to disclose that to a certain extent, right? So
I don't want to interrupt you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
I think that's huge. In fact, I just made a note to add that to my presentation for the next time I give it to someone. And Mark, you must have, if you're still on, you must have been in my class last week, because one of my professors actually flashed up an ingredient list, and an ingredient label just like food, and was suggesting exactly that, that in the future we should have that. And I think that's an excellent contribution and a good way forward. I hope it happens, or we can make it happen, right? We're a bunch of powerful people here, so who can contribute.
Yeah, and we'll see, and we'll see also how the presidential executive order, I mean, it will actually, it's almost been 6 months already. So time flies. I mean, in the US, the one that was issued regarding, AI and everything. So, and there are certain executive agencies that were mandated to do certain things. And so we'll see how that's going to transpire, because that's coming from the executive branch. But oftentimes these directives are more specific in terms of like, what do you need to do? It's more like to address the immediate issue, as opposed to when you're, going through the legislative process that will take years and years and years. So it's basically, well, I don't want to say the Band-Aid solution, but it's just to address the issue as soon as you can, to make the companies aware, to make the companies comply. I mean, I know that's happening in the software world big time, especially driven by security vulnerabilities. So everyone wants to know that. But I think it's all very related. It's kind of the same rationale, I think. So yeah, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And talking about the US regulating AI, I just kind of wanted to put my 2 cents in. It's definitely more kind of targeted, and definitely more focused, I would say, on just some particular issues that different states are trying to solve in their different ways. So pretty soon, I think we'll just end up with 50 different AI state regulations, because we already have a bunch. So it's just, it's going to be interesting talk about how complicated the AI Act is. So just across the board in the US, we'll just have a multitude of things to comply with.
Hmm.
Such an optimistic view from me.
It's true. If you think about
More things to comply with. Bring it on. Throw it in there.
Right.
So we're almost at the time, right?
And we will see the outcome of all these. Yeah, thank you so much everyone who tuned in today, and we'll be happy if you send us more questions or comments. These are always welcome, because our goal is to have this hopefully two-way conversation. And our next talk is scheduled for late March, and we will announce on our LinkedIn account, and we'll create an event, so please look out for that. And Lara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's been
it was a
pleasure.
brilliant presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
because
interesting.
we try to have speakers and folks from all the different facets of life, not just talking legalese and discussing all the recent OpenAI copyright lawsuits. Oh my God. But just kind of have this different perspectives, because I think this technology permeates all facets of life. It's not some specific, very narrow kind of application of this. It's everywhere, literally everywhere. And so that's why it's really good to have different perspectives on this, and just going to learn from you as well, because I'm learning every single time when we have our speakers. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Same here. Thank you so much.
I was waiting for our final slides, but are we having the regular thing, the thing? No, the thing.
For some reason my two monitor setup is being cranky today. So you guys are not gonna see Neo dodging bullets, stopping bullets today. But
Next time.
I promise next time he's gonna make an appearance. Yeah.
So that's why I was just for a final wrap up. I was just waiting, just in case it's gonna show up. Thank you so much, Larry. It was I truly enjoyed this discussion today.
Thank you. I love the discussion. Yes, indeed.
Come
All right,
back
thank you.
when you come from the UK next time.
Yeah, great. I love it.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.